to pass it along.
There we
Good. Okay. So, yeah, with that last bit of business, take it away, Haakon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You should be able to see a picture of our Detroit on the trailer, and you should be able to hear my voice. Please yell if you don't hear anything or you don't see anything. As I've been saying, I'm Haakon MacCallum, and this is just a quick talk to make you more familiar with our 1913 Detroit Electric. And this picture is just for fun. And as you can see, our Detroit is now being towed with electric power. So when people walk up, you can say, yes, absolutely, it's towed with electricity. So, of course, we start with safety. Um, so let's keep public appendages out of the car. It's okay if they put their head in to have a to have a look-see around, but keep their hands out because if they stick their hands in, they tend to touch stuff, and they always go for something fragile. So it's best to keep that out. The outside is okay to touch, however. The outside is got a patina, as those of you who've seen it will know, and it's due to the many years of being touched and handled, and we don't mind that. It just makes it look more authentic. The batteries are charged and they're for live. Um, I wouldn't get too worried about electric shock. It's pretty hard to do that, but it's good to be safe. So we'll tell people not to touch the batteries. And the last thing you can warn about is color transfer from the Detroit to people's clothing. So if you see someone sidle up with, lots of white on, then you probably give them a warning just so they don't lean against the car, just so we don't spoil their clothing, uh, because it's not everything is color fast after 100 years. So we'll start with a tiny detail. Our car used to be called in 1912, and you'll see that the information plate on the front where you would normally see a license plate, it still calls it 1912. So why is it actually a 1913? And that's because back in those days, the concept of a model year is not as well defined as it is today, or at least they had a different definition. And our car was made and probably bought in 1912. So therefore, it's always been called 1912, even by ICBC. But using today's definition of a model year, it is a 1913 because it appears in the 1913 catalog. And that's a tradition or a naming convention that we use for cars today. Um, the catalog page, for those of you who want to see it, is on the banner, one of the roll-up banners in our booth, and you can invite people to see that. Oops. So speaking of banners, here they are. These two are about 6 feet high in the booth, and one of them has the history of the Detroit, um, and the other one is a history of EVs in general. On your screen, the one is the history of Detroit is on your left. Most of what I will say today is on these banners, so you can give them a read when you arrive at Everything Electric to brush up before the start of your shift, and you should be pretty good to go. Viva's Detroit is our ambassador to help us meet the mission of promoting electric vehicles. It still runs, and there haven't been any major restorations at all, only repairs. And when it's not at the Everything Electric show, the public can see it at the Powerhouse Estate Falls Visitor Center, which is located a few kilometers west of Mission on the Dewdney Trunk Road. The powerhouse is, in fact, really cool to visit, and it's a decommissioned hydroelectric generating station that's now a museum. The QR code for the museum is on the Detroit banner in the booth, and so therefore you can direct the public there for more information if they want to go see the car there. Well worth recommending them, especially if they have kids, to go see the museum. Uh, you'll get asked about the batteries. Everybody wants to know. Everybody knows that's the weak point of an electric car. So these are the batteries. The original batteries in the car were nickel iron, or sometimes called knife batteries, made by Edison, and that's as in Thomas Edison in his company. The original batteries, which you can see on the left on your screen, lasted 80 years in the car and were then replaced with a few sets of lead acid batteries, golf cart type batteries before being replaced with a reproduction set of the nickel iron batteries, which are you see on the right hand side, and that's what's in it today. The new batteries are expected to outlive all of us, and you can see them side by side in the pictures here. The picture you see on the left there is also on the banner in the booth. So if people want to see that, you can direct them over there. For those of the public that really want more details, there are two battery packs in the car, or the cells that you see are arranged in two battery packs of about 40 volts each. The front and the back car contain an unequal number of cells, so the distribution of the two packs in the car is not quite as simple as front and rear, but it's close. It turns out nickel iron batteries are an alkaline battery. I'm sure many of you or most of you have heard that term before, just meaning it's a base has a basic electrolyte as opposed to an acidic electrolyte, is all that means. And their batteries are made up of iron and nickel plates in a bath of potassium hydroxide. And that's a little simplification because I think it's actually iron something or other and nickel something or other else. It's in a bath of potassium hydroxide, which is the base, and that's often called lye. And that's a common substance used for all kinds of things, including as a food additive. And these batteries typically last 25 to 50 years. And the wear out mechanism for us has been mechanical, not an electrical wear out. In other words, the cases of the original batteries just fell apart after the years. The other common EV battery type of the day is the lead acid battery. That's the one you're familiar with. It's in your car today and in your gasoline car today as a starting battery. It is and was in those days a good deal cheaper than nickel iron battery. The lead acid battery consists of plates made of lead and lead oxide, which are in a bath of sulfuric acid. And for those of you who are comparing that to the lye, it's much more dangerous and definitely not used as a food additive. Lead acid batteries typically last 2 to 5 years, and much like today, they were the standard battery that came with our car. In the day, Anderson charged $600 or about $600 for the nickel iron batteries that came with our car, and $600 in those days was about a year's salary for a professional, and coincidentally, the same price as a Model T Ford. So you can see that the battery option was a very expensive option in the day. You'll also get asked about the motor controller. It's under the seat, in fact, the driver's seat. And feel free to open the access hatch to show it off. But do beware because it is live. So if you stick your fingers in there, you could shock yourself without working too hard. So best not to do that. The voltage isn't that high, so you're unlikely to really hurt yourself, but it'll tickle a little bit. The controller is a rotating drum, and you can see that in the picture. And it basically connects the two packs in various configurations to the different windings that are in the motor to control the speed. This type of motor controller was used in elevators of the day and in vehicles like forklifts all the way up to the 70s before electronics took over. The motor is under the body of the car. And as far as we know, only the bearings have been replaced. Ironically, not the carbon brushes, which is what everybody thinks is the thing that you need to replace in a motor. The brushes seem to be lasting really well. The maintenance instructions call for a few drops of oil every week under normal use, and the oiling points are in fact under the carpet in the cab. So if you want, you can lift up the carpet and just show off the brass oiling points in the cabin floor. People also want to know about the brakes. I'm not really sure why people want to know about the brakes, but they always want to know about brakes. So there are two sets of mechanically actuated shoes in each wheel. No, sorry, in each rear wheel. There are no brakes on the front wheel, excuse me. One set of shoes in each wheel is operated by one of the two brake pedals in the car. Some will suggest that it's like tractor steering, but each pedal actuates one set of shoes in both rear wheels, not just one wheel, so therefore you do not get a steering action when you apply the brakes. The little pedal in the middle, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, just between the two bigger pedals, is just the parking brake, and all three pedals will ratchet forward to lock the brakes on. And in the picture you see, the pedals are forward, and therefore the parking brake is locked on. So the controls, these are the controls for the car. Most of the control is via the two tillers you see. Those are sticks you hold with your hands. Steering is the longer tiller, and that's the one on the right in your picture. You would put your right hand on that, and you push forward on the tiller to go left and pull back to go right. Straight ahead is perpendicular to the direction of the car. So as you see it right now, you're turning left just a little bit. The accelerator is held in the left hand and has the red button on the end so you can identify it. There are 5 forward speeds as you push the tiller forward. And to go in reverse, you just lift up the tiller about an inch or so and push it forward doing the same thing. The red button on the end is for the bell, and it sounds like an old ringing telephone. So this is the picture of the actual bell itself. And it said that the makers of our car didn't want their cars to sound like the gas cars of the day, which of course had a horn. So our car was given a bell, and the bell mechanism is located under the car, and it's really hard to see because it's tucked up into the frame. But if someone's feeling adventurous, then you probably could see it. There's an ampere hour meter just in front of the brake pedals on the driver's side, and it's the equivalent of a fuel gauge for an electric car. It looks a lot like the electricity meter that used to be until a few years ago on the side of our houses, because it's nearly identical because they were both made by the same company. In the last few years, the house meters, as I was saying, are becoming digital, so they don't look much the same anymore. And you can point out luxuries like the flower vase, leather for just about all the upholstery. There's silk in the curtains, which aren't in there, but there's silk on the faux or the seatbelt type thing that's there. And there's satin on the roof above you. And the curved glass of the windows doesn't seem like much in today's world, but curved glass was a big deal in 1913. The tires could also use a mention. In 1912, rubber is made from the sap of a rubber tree, and that sap is in fact a creamy white. And it turns out by adding carbon black, which is essentially what you and I would call charcoal or soot, to rubber, the white rubber from the tree, makes it stronger and tougher. And it had been invented in 1912 when our car was built. It wasn't regularly done on cars of our vintage until later in the teens. So car tires at the time were all white or cream colored. Our tires today are made using the original molds that were made these same Firestone tires in 1912, and you can point out the non-skid writing on the tread. That's a picture of the tread that you see there. So we'll talk about the history of our car. It's written on the banner, the banner for the history of our car in the booth, so you can point people there. But the main points are that it was originally bought by Cecil and Florence French, and you can see them here. Florence was known for driving the car, though of course they both drove it, and she drove it up into the early 50s, as in 1950s, not her age of 50s, which was, and that was very nearly about 40 years of time. So that's a long time she drove it. And that's the reason that our car survives now, is because she drove the car so long. Back in those days, antiques were not valuable. They were just old stuff. And they were becoming more valuable in about the 1950s as well. And so basically she drove it until that time. And therefore, Phil Foster, who's considered to be BC's first car collector, came along and bought the car from her and preserved it. And we'll talk about the history of EVs in general, just because we were sort of in history. And so the short story is that around the turn of the previous century, the 3 power sources for cars, which are electricity, steam, and gas, were all vying for dominance. At the time, it was not clear which was better, so cars came in all three flavors. In 1990, no, sorry, in 1900 rather, it's said that 38% of cars were electric, which is more than any other type of fuel, a higher percentage than any other type of fuel in the day. I just wanted to give some context for that. So in 1900, there were only about 8,000 cars in North America. And of that number, about 1,000 or 2,000 of them were electric taxis in and around the US. So that kind of skews the numbers. But by 1912, EVs had hit their peak. And going by percentages, there were about as many EVs in 1912 on the road as there were in 2023. In terms of percentages, I believe electric cars today have become a higher percentage than EVs reached in the time of our car. So at that time, well-to-do ladies and professionals chose the electric car because it was easy to drive, quiet, not smelly, reliable, and had no chance of injury from crank starting it. Equally important, you can see how a lady dressed in those days. So an enclosed car offered protection from the weather and from the riffraff, which for a lady who could afford this car were both equally important. The enclosed gas cars of the day, they gave us the popular term rattle trap, and because they were like that, they did not please those ladies, and they chose electric. Uh, the original gas cars were difficult to start, often refused to do so, and so picture yourself as a well-off lady of the time. And to crank start the car, you need to wade out through an inch or two of manure on the road, or horse manure, that is, and then stand around the middle of that road trying to get the cursed thing started. And to add insult to injury, it actually takes a great deal of strength to hand start a car. And that was just not ladylike, if in fact you could do it at all. The picture you see on your screen here is page 2 of the 1913 Detroit Electric sales brochure for our car. And this is a great picture here. It's also on the History of EVs banner that's in the booth, so you can see it there. So this is the second location of the Detroit Athletics Club on Ladies' Day, which is in fact the 16th of April in 1915. The club was an all-male club, and Ladies' Day was held just before the new location for the club uh, opened. So that was, to allow the wives to snoop around. And I've just noticed for the first time, if you look at the building, which is the white building in the center of the picture, you can just see a step ladder almost right in front of the first window to the left of the door. And so you can see that whatever they're doing, they're still not finished with the building. So many of the members of our club were Detroit automobile executives, like the president of Packard, for example. And in the picture, you can see piles of cars, but there are actually only a few gasoline cars, showing how popular EVs were amongst those well-to-do wives. And of course, a great number of them are Detroit electrics, because you can see they look very much like our car. Of the Detroit electrics you see, they were mostly sold by William Anderson, who was the owner of the Anderson Electric Car Company, which is a company that built our car. And unsurprisingly, he was a member of the Detroit Athletics Club. And I did manage to spot one gasoline car in the picture. It's if you look on the left of the picture, on the far side of the screen, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth car that you see from the left of your screen. And that's the only gasoline car I think maybe 2 doors behind it is one more gasoline car that I can spot. Anyway, the Detroit Athletics Club, it still exists today. That building is still there. And membership isn't that bad. It's a $3,500 initiation fee, which is cheap, cheap, cheap. And the monthly fees are about $300 a month. So if you want to join, there you go. You could join the same club that all the big automotive people were members of back in the day. So the most common question you'll encounter when you talk about the history of EVs is what happened? Why did we stop? Why did they go away? So there are lots of theories floating around on the internet, and like all things, it's complicated. And to make it more difficult, times were different back then. So it's difficult for us to understand how people were thinking. So I'll sort of try and work that in here. So in those days, only the rich traveled for vacation. So everybody, of course, wanted to do that. They just wanted in. Back then, it was called touring, and it was a huge deal, even bigger than it is today. Because I guess before then you couldn't do it. And just like today, the electric, regardless of how good it is for the job, it's got a bad rap. So and it's a combination of the topics that drive the conversation today. So we got to talk about speed, range, cost, and you know in those days, we also have to add to that a dose of sexism. And in those days, you really had a male car and a female car, and everybody knew that. So you can see the ladylike Brougham on the left and the man's touring car pretty clearly are different cars in the pictures you see. So a real man, for some reason, wants to floss the bugs out of his teeth and when he goes for a drive. So he drives a touring car. And a lady isn't interested in that. So she drives the Brougham. As I said, cost was a big deal too. So in 1912, the Model T was about 600 bucks. And that was the yearly salary of a professional, as I said. But our car cost nearly 4 times as much as that, 3,200 bucks and change. It was the cost of a medium-sized downtown house at the time. There really wasn't much chance for the average guy to consider an electric. It was like cross-shopping a RAV4 with a $300,000 Rolls Royce, for example. The Joe average just couldn't afford it. And as a note, to convert the money of 1912 to today's dollars, you can just multiply it by about 100, at least in round numbers. It works pretty well. So why was a gas car cheaper, you'll ask? Steel and wood in a Model T, which is a gas car, and aluminum, copper, and lead and nickel in an electric vehicle. All of those things are very expensive, especially aluminum. The market for market for early EVs was rich ladies, and the cars were built to suit with leather, satin, silk, and all the things that I talked about, and anything else you could think of that was expensive. And of course, Henry Ford's assembly line versus a handcrafted EV made up the difference in the costs. So electrics, as they were called back then, were for women, and because of that, the real men didn't want one, and there were also for the very rich, and because of that, the real man couldn't afford one even if he did want it. So the result was that the sales did not support the huge costs the manufacturers needed to keep up with developing new features for their cars. And so the next slide talks about that. So it turns out the gas companies, because they did have the sales numbers, they did have the money to innovate, and they did innovate. And it didn't take many years for the gas car got much better than the electric car. Whereas in 1912, they were very similar in performance. By about 1930, they were streets apart. And so let's compare the electric car, which is on your left, and from 1912 to, in fact, 1931, which is this one is, essentially the only upgrades they got in the 20 years was wind-up windows and bumpers. It's barely changed. Sure, the tires are a little bigger and the roof is lower to, keep the style as it was changing over the times. But otherwise, you can't tell a new one from an old one. And just for fun, let's talk about just one of those features that changed with time, and that's top speed. And the top speed of the Cadillac you see on the right is 80 to 100 miles an hour, whereas the fastest Detroit model could only make it to about 30 or 35 miles an hour by then, barely faster than it went in 1912. I talked about the lower roof, and the roof could be lower, mostly because you had smaller hats in 1930s, and you can see that here. So the top hat was becoming less popular. The bowler was in, and for ladies' hats, you can see that they're significantly smaller. I suppose less cumbersome too. And here are two you wish to memorize. And the link for this Detroit fact sheet, sorry, is in the chat for this meeting. And don't forget about the roll up banners in the booth, where you can send curious visitors, and including yourself, to learn more. And with that, I'll thank you very much and open it back up to our moderators.
Okay, thank you very much, Haakon, for going through that again. I learn more every time I go through it, so enjoyed it. I thought I might duck out actually, but I listened again and got a much clearer picture, I think, ready to go for the big show coming up. So thanks for that. So if anyone wants to ask any questions to Haakon about the car, um, let's use the hands up procedure. And I don't see any hands up right now. Uh, I did have a question that occurred to me at the beginning when you were talking about the tires, I think, but I can't remember what it was.
Oh, yes. As I said, the tires are very close to original. They're made on the original molds. They will look precisely like the tires looked in 1912. The only difference, of course, is that the rubber we use today will be significantly improved over the rubber they had in those days.
And if I bought just a regular tire, how much actual rubber, is there any rubber still in those tires, or are they all
Yeah, I don't believe they use very much natural rubber in any car tires today.
I wouldn't
I
think.
think the synthetics are far outperforming.
Yeah,
Um,
I used to work in Michigan. You're quite right, Haakon.
okay, good.
Yeah, even back when I was working in Michelin in the 70s and 80s,
Yes.
there was down to a very small percentage. It was mostly synthetics
Yeah.
Yeah.
and mixing with the different carbon blacks and that.
Nice. Thanks, Walter.
And maybe you could tell us a history of those tires because I know you changed them in my
Sure.
time. So these tires have had very little wear on them.
Yeah.
And how long had the tires before that lasted? Do you know?
So, absolutely, yeah, I have a pretty good sense of the timeline. So, it turns out that um, in about just before the war or during the war, they were not able to replace the tires. I'm assuming that the original, because our car came with solid rubber tires to start with, which means they were not pneumatic. They had no air in them. So I'm guessing that they were replaced quite quickly in the late teens, probably, because they would have not lasted all that didn't last very long in those days. And therefore, there would have been a succession of pneumatic tires that look much like what you see on the car today, probably black ones, however. Back in around in this during the Second World War, rubber was getting hard to find, and certainly old car tires were not highest on the production priority list. So therefore, in 1940, no, sorry, 1930 something or other, late 30s, early 40s, they did change the car tires to a tire that looks very much like the tires that you see on cars today. In other words, bigger, fatter tires. That was on it until about the mid 80s when the fourth owner of our car, which is Vern Welburn, he swapped the tires or the wheels back to original wood wheels, which is what you see on it today, and therefore the old looking tire. That was about the mid 80s or so. They were a white wall tire, which is not actually correct for our car because white wall tires were only later, much 20s, 30s. So therefore, that they're not correct. We would have had solid white tires on our car. So they stayed on until about 2020-ish, somewhere in there, before or after COVID. I can't remember when we went back to the white tire, which is what is on there today. So therefore, the ones you see on there today are actually quite new. And so it'll be interesting to see how long they last. But I expect to get a few decades out of them without working too hard. Their failure will be, getting hard and cracking, which is, how rubber ages over time. So that'll
Yeah.
be what takes them out.
Okay, great. We do have a few hands up now. So let's go to the first one. That's Ron. Go ahead.
Yes, actually, Haakon, maybe you could stop sharing your screen so we can see everybody. That would be good to do. Oh, yeah, good. And if I can add to why the gasoline cars took over, like you said, quite one of the critical things was the cost of production. So, the gas cars, because of Henry Ford and the assembly line, were so much cheaper. But back in 1912, gas stations were beginning to pop up in in North America. But gasoline was well, because it was a waste product from the kerosene production, you could buy it at the general store and probably some farmer would have it. So if you're out traveling around and you ran out of gas, yeah, you could probably get some there as well. And somebody who thinks they know everything is going to come up to you and say, "Oh, it was the electric starter that killed the electric car." No, the electric starter was one significant thing, but it was the things that you mentioned, Hawken. It was the price and the cheapness of gasoline compared to the cost of electricity, which was quite expensive back then. That's my 2 cents.
Great, I got a 2 cents too.
Yeah, go ahead. You're not next, Bruce. Go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things that Haakon touched on was how the popularity of touring, taking your car out of the city. So if you had an electric car and you only drove in the city, most cities did have electrification, and that's why Victoria had the car without a problem. But once you went out of town, you had a problem of where you're going to charge the car. And one of the advantages of the gasoline-powered car was you could buy gasoline just about anywhere, whereas you couldn't guarantee that you'd get electricity just about anywhere unless it was a big center. So that was one of the other reasons that the gasoline powered car become popular, cheaper car, and you could actually buy a substance somewhere to power the thing. So that's what was happening there. And of course, the other fact that people will talk about was that Henry Ford went bankrupt, and he went out car racing with a gasoline powered car to get his funds to go and get started again with his second project of a gasoline powered car. And the reason he went with a gasoline powered car instead of an electric car, which of course his wife, Clara Ford, actually drove. She had 2 Detroit Electrics because she didn't want to be in a situation where some guy had to start her car for her, was that a Standard Oil Company of wherever the heck it was at that time said to him, you need money to build these cars. We'd love to finance you, but could you start putting engines in that use this waste product called gasoline that we're burning off? And if you'll do that, we'll give you money to start your car company and build your cars. And Henry said, oh, yeah, by all means, we'll do that. And that's why we built all the gas cars, because they had this waste product, as somebody suggested, that allowed them to run their cars. And yeah, 1912 was when the electric starter was invented, and it was originally put in a Cadillac. And there's a whole story about why that was done. And it did start to make a change whereby you could get self-starting gasoline-powered cars, and that started to help. My 2 cents.
Thank you. The next up, we have 2 people in line, Robbie, and then on deck, we've got Steve. So go ahead, Robbie.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering, given that modern electric cars have such good acceleration and are so peppy and speedy, why was there no development at all, it would appear, in the performance of electric cars between sort of the Detroit and the 1930s? Because 1930 Cadillac is obviously such superior performance. Was it just this where the money was going, as Bruce says, the money was going into gas cars, and also they were cheaper and more affordable? Because there seems to have been no innovation in electric motors or whatever, after the Detroit came out.
Sure, yeah, I can talk to that. So basically, the rate limiting step in that exercise for a greater speed is horsepower you're looking for to go quickly, and so the rate limiting step is in fact the batteries, the motors and the controllers. Well, they're just big chunks of copper, so you just make them even beefier, and then you can run about as much power through it as you wish to. So the batteries were the rate limiting step. Nickel iron batteries, that's actually the one thing they do not do a good job is developing power. They do a good job of developing energy, but they're not great at developing horsepower. So they were not suitable for a high power race car. The lead acids of the day, like the lead acids of today, they're better at producing horsepower, but the more horsepower you produce, the faster you wear out your battery. Temperature, high current, that kind of stuff causes failures in lead acid batteries. So I'll give you an interesting detail. Back in the day, if you chose a car in 1930, you could go faster than 20 miles an hour, which is the top speed of our car. And as I say, up to about 30 miles an hour. If you chose a car that went up to 30 miles an hour, then you did not get a warranty on the batteries. If you chose a car limited to 20 miles an hour, you got a warranty on the batteries. And that's because of what I just told you. And basically, the reason is that nobody had the inclination or the time or the money to develop a better battery that gave you the horsepower. We today have developed, for example, they have the spiral batteries, the Optima batteries. Those are what you guys would know as the yellow top, red top, blue top batteries that people put in their cars. And they develop higher horsepower. So you can have more horsepower in a lead acid battery today, but in those days they just hadn't developed it. They may also have it may also have been a technology thing. They just truly didn't have the technology required to make a battery that had that kind of horsepower capability without a great deal of investment, and they just didn't have that money to invest in those days.
Yeah, so they would have needed to explore different chemical,
Yes.
ingredients or whatever, like we've done,
Yeah.
like we've done recently with lithium ion and iron phosphate, whatever it is. Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, last hand up for right now. Please jump in with questions if they occur to you. Is Steve, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious. You showed the picture of the our car 2013, and then you showed, and the same picture was the Cadillac. Sorry, 1913. 1 was 1930, the other was 1931. I didn't notice a crank on the Cadillac. When were cranks eliminated?
In the Cadillac, it would have been very shortly before 1915.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
right after 1912, it was invented.
Yeah, 1912 was the first one. It was, in fact, a Cadillac. I don't know what model, but I would assume that all Cadillacs had electric starters. Well, in fact, I think most gasoline cars by about 1915 would have had electric starters, if not all electric gasoline cars by that time. Because that would be one of those things that you just didn't buy a car with an electric starter after it became available. It was like buying, well, I don't know what it would be. It would it's a huge change to a car. It would just make it a no starter if you have to crank it by hand.
Like buying a gas car today.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, would you buy a gas car today with a crank start on it? I mean, you wouldn't consider it for an instant, right?
Or buying a car with a standard transmission where they have automatic transmissions all over the place.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah. Are you finished with that, Haakon?
Yes, thanks.
Yes. Okay, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, when I was growing up, we had a 1929 Chevrolet, and there was a hole under the radiator for putting the crank into, and you still got the crank with the car.
Oh,
Back then.
cool. So
Yeah.
that was a backup then.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So you could still do it in 1920s, the late 20s.
Yeah, sometimes you had to because everything was 6 volt back then.
Yes, that's right. Yes, exactly. When it was 6 volts, you didn't get a lot of oomph out of your electric motors, or your electric starter rather.
Well, 1950s Pontiac had 6 volt. It wasn't until
Oh, yes, absolutely.
56 or 57 Chevrolets you started seeing 12-volt systems.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Eric,
I see one more hand.
Okay. Yeah, Eric's got his hand up. Yeah, go ahead.
I can beat Bill. I've owned a number of cars that had holes in the bumpers, but they were British from the 40s and 50s.
Oh, yeah.
The British tended to lag behind in some ways.
oh no, they had Lucas Electrics. Lucas
Yeah.
is the god,
Yeah,
of,
that's
the god of
That, like
intermittent light, or the Prince of Darkness.
But
That's-
Eric, these cars would have been it would have been a backup emergency system. It wasn't
Oh
the
yeah, so
primary.
it was a
You
spare.
weren't
It
meant
was like
to always do that. It was like if your battery was dead, you could still get going. Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
why the British people drink warm beer? Because Lucas makes refrigeration.
Yes.
But the crank in the cars that I had was in the back, like the tire iron or the wrench, that
Well,
It was
I grew
something-
up. Yeah, go ahead.
it was something you used on occasion. especially when you're young and had no money and you're running with a dead battery and that kind of stuff.
I grew up driving motorcycles before I drove cars, and I'm old enough that the motorcycles I had did not have starters. You kick started them. You didn't hand crank them. There was a foot pedal, and you yarded on that foot pedal to get her going. Pretty much it was the same technology as a hand crank, and they were about I mean some fancy bikes had starters, but I guess real men drove bikes, and it was considered to be a bit sissy to have one with an electric starter. So the trend stayed there, and I think most of the motorcycles that I was driving when I was young would be kick-started. Yeah.
I think it took a long time for Harley to come up with an electric starter in a bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't suspect it was a technical problem or lack of innovation. It was kind of an image thing, that's what you're supposed to do.
Testosterone poisoning.
That's right. People, real men don't push their thumb there.
Well, and they probably did put starters in them so women would ride. But it's technique, not skill, and not weight and strength. It's technique for starting most engines.
I'll never forget coming into Horseshoe Bay on the ferry, and 10 minutes before we docked, this guy started kicking his Harley.
Yeah.
He kicking, and then we started unloading. He was still kicking, and I pulled up beside him on my big Honda, and I said, "You should get one of these things." It was a red bike.
That went over big.
Yeah, oh yeah, and then I rode away.
Yeah, I don't think Harley was noted for great engineering. I could be wrong, but I think they're struggling now. Kirk is shaking his head. Yep, Harley was not noted for great engineering.
They'd have cookie sheets on the showroom floor to collect the oil drips.
Yeah. I can remember having
brand new bikes.
A 1965 Plymouth Valiant with a V8 engine and a carburetor and a dual point ignition system. And I took it in to get the spark plugs changed and the dual point ignition system adjusted. And the guy didn't put in a good enough capacitor, and it had to take it back the next day because it was missing and not firing properly. Those things were a nightmare to keep running.
Ron has his hand up. We'll get him in.
Yeah, not EV related, but since you were talking about Harley Davidsons, yes, they're not famous for their engineering, but back when Harley Davidson first started, I think this was around 1916, 1918, they were the first to put a muffler on their motorcycle, and the motorcycle was called the Quiet Gray Gentleman because they painted the motorcycles gray. Kind of the opposite of what Harley Davidsons do today.
Yeah, just about every Harley owner, first thing they do is take off the muffler and put on loud pipes because what do they say? Loud pipes save lives because you can hear the Harley Davidson coming behind you even if you can't see it.
That was a story.
Well, when I was young, I used to go down and watch this flat track oval racing. And this would probably be in the 70s, I guess. The Harleys always won. And after I watched the racing for a while, I realized how they won is they basically owned the organization, and the Japanese were starting to make much better bikes at that time. And the Japanese would come up with some new bike, and the rules committee would instantly ban whatever it had. You're not allowed to have 3 cylinders. Yeah. You're not allowed to have, all sorts of things. Electric starter, maybe. And whatever the opposition made, they would just outlaw it. So they didn't need to spend on all that engineering. They could just outlaw everybody else's stuff.
It's talking to somebody today about electric cars and the future, and he was asking about where's the Tesla Model 2. And I was trying to explain that where Tesla is focused right now, or at least where Elon Musk is focused right now, is on a conveyance. something you order with your phone. It comes to the end of your drive where you get in it. It drives you someplace. You get out of it, and it goes off and does something else. And when you want to get back home again, you go to your phone, you call this thing up, it comes to the wherever you are, you get in it, and it takes you where you want to go. And Sandy Monroe was talking about the new generation. All they really care about, they don't want driver's licenses, they don't want cars. All they really care about is something that'll take them to the party and take them back from the party. And of course, they can have a beverage or two at the party and not worry about any problems because they can't afford housing. And spending all that kind of money on a car is, depreciating asset that sits in front of your house. And then, most of them are in apartments. They don't have a place to park it. There's my 2 cents.
Okay, at this stage, I'm going to suggest we stop the recording, and unless you'd like to record your EV news or whatever the segment is. Oh,